Welcome, weary traveler of the waking world. You've reached a sanctuary, a space designed not for action, but for quiet contemplation. In the frantic rush of our days, we often chase what we believe will bring us peace, be it rest or reward. Yet rarely do we find both in the equilibrium we crave. Today, we embark on a different kind of pursuit, one that doesn't demand your exertion but invites your deep attention. This isn't just another story to fill the silence. It's an invitation to understand a fundamental rhythm of existence, a dance that has played out across millennia, shaping empires and individual destinies alike. You found yourself here, perhaps seeking respite from the constant hum of responsibility, or maybe just a gentle nudge towards a different perspective. What if I told you that the very essence of growth, not just in wealth, but in understanding and peace, lies not in perpetual motion, but in the art of patient stillness? What if the secrets to a richer, more fulfilling life are whispered not during the clamor of effort, but in the hushed moments of incubation, in the fertile darkness where true potential germinates? This narrative is crafted to unravel just that. It's a journey that spans continents and centuries, tracing the silent, ceaseless flow of something that has always been present, even when unseen, even when we were asleep. We will explore how this force, this river of value, has navigated the currents of time, adapting, multiplying, and ultimately demonstrating profound truth about its nature. Stay with us, and by the time you drift off, you will carry with you a newfound appreciation for the power of waiting, for the wisdom embedded in the quiet expansion that mirrors the natural world's own cyclical abundance. You'll discover that sometimes the most productive act is to simply allow, to trust the process, and to rest not as an escape, but as a vital component of creation itself. This is more than a story. It is a gentle unfolding, a revelation designed to soothe your mind while illuminating your understanding, preparing you for a deeper, more confident embrace of life's potential. Our story begins not with ticking clocks or bustling markets, but with a whisper of wind across vast, dusty plains and the creak of camel saddles laden with precious cargo. Imagine, if you will, the ancient Silk Road, a network of arteries stretching across continents, a tapestry woven from trade, culture, and ambition. Here, in this era before instant communication, before spreadsheets and algorithms, lay the genesis of profound understanding of value and its persistent, almost sentient growth. Money, in its earliest forms, gleaming coins, bolts of silk, spices that perfumed the air, didn't merely change hands. It began a journey of its own. It traveled, not just from merchant to merchant, but through the very fabric of time. Consider the merchant, carefully counting his gains at the end of a long, arduous day. He would see the fruits of his labor, yes, but he might also have glimpsed something more, a seed of future wealth, dormant but present, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. This wasn't just about bartering or accumulating. It was about the initial act of entrusting value to a journey, to a process that would unfold beyond his immediate sight. Did these early traders understand they were planting seeds for future harvest, or were they simply focused on the immediate transaction? It's a question that invites us to consider the subconscious wisdom embedded in human endeavors, the innate understanding that certain actions, once set in motion, possess their own momentum. This concept of money not sleeping wasn't born of sleepless nights spent worrying over ledgers, but from a fundamental observation. Value, when put to work, has a tendency to perpetuate and even expand itself, a quiet, insistent multiplication that occurs even when the owner's direct attention is elsewhere. This inherent characteristic, this tireless spirit, is the first thread we'll follow as we unravel the intricate story of enduring prosperity and profound power of patient growth, a narrative that begins in the dust of ancient trade routes and continues to resonate in our modern world. From a vast expanse of the Silk Road, our narrative takes a sharp turn towards the glittering, labyrinthine canals of Venice. Imagine stepping into a bustling trading post, the air thick with the scent of salt and exotic spices, the cacophony of countless languages echoing off stone walls. Venice, a city built on water, a trading empire forged from audacious voyages and shrewd diplomacy, became a crucible for a more sophisticated understanding of finance. Here, in these formidable city-states, the idea of money truly began to shed its passive skin and embrace a more dynamic existence. Think of the Venetian bankers, not just counting their gold, but orchestrating its flow. They understood that capital wasn't merely a store of value, but a force that could be lent, invested, and, crucially, allowed to mature. This was where the concept of compound interest, that silent, exponential engine of growth, began to truly take hold, not as a theoretical principle, but as a practical, wealth-generating reality. Picture the immense wooden chests, the heavy seals, the intricate ledgers recording not just transactions, but the subtle, persistent creep of accumulated earnings. The Venetians mastered the art of waiting, of allowing their money to work for them while they engaged in other pursuits, be it diplomacy, art, or further exploration. They understood that time, in conjunction with carefully managed capital, was one of the most potent forces available. What does it take for us, in our hyper-fast world, to recapture that appreciation for the power of temporal multiplication? Are we too eager to see immediate results? Too impatient to let the seeds we've sown reach their full potential? This period marks a crucial evolution. Money was not just moving. It was actively growing, multiplying in the quiet hum of secured investments, in the patient unfolding of trade agreements, and in the very structure of financial institutions designed to facilitate this ongoing, almost organic expansion. It's a testament to the idea that prosperity isn't always about frantic effort, but often about strategic patience and the astute recognition of time's inherent power to amplify value, a lesson etched into the very stones of this maritime republic. As we transition from the historical grandeur of Venice, our journey now leads us into the realm of the digital, the ethereal, and the lightning fast. The modern age has transformed the way we perceive and interact with money. The physical coins and the weighty ledgers of old have been replaced by streams of data, by algorithms that execute trades in fractions a second, and by digital wallets that hold fortunes at our fingertips. Yet, beneath this veneer of instantaneous exchange, the fundamental principle of money's persistent, often silent, growth remains remarkably intact. Think about the vast digital marketplaces, the interconnected global financial networks humming with activity 24/7. Even as we sleep, transactions are occurring, investments are being managed, and values being generated and compounded. This constant, unseen activity underscores a core idea. Money, in its essence, has never truly stopped working, even if we have. It's a powerful concept to contemplate as you prepare to rest. While you are resting, while your conscious mind is disengaged from the immediate demands of the day, the forces of finance continue their relentless, often exponential, dance. This isn't to say that effort is irrelevant. Rather, it suggests a rebalancing of perspective. Perhaps true prosperity isn't solely born from the frantic pursuit of more work, but from the intelligent application of effort followed by periods of conscious, confident repose, allowing the accumulated value to do what it does best: grow. Consider the implications of this. If money can multiply while we are in a state of rest, what does that say about our own capacity for growth during periods of stillness? Are we missing opportunities for our own internal development, our own creative insights, by constantly being on, by never allowing ourselves a fertile ground of quiet incubation? This is a paradox we explore. The realization that wealth, both material and personal, often flourishes not in the constant hustle, but in the wisdom of knowing when to act and, more importantly, when to allow. The digital age, with its relentless pace, paradoxically highlights the enduring power of patience and the silent, potent magic of compound growth. It's a reminder that even in the most advanced technological landscape, the ancient rhythm of money never sleeping continues, waiting for us to align with its steady, generative beat. Now, let us delve deeper into this rhythm, into the very nature of this persistent multiplication. What is it about money, or more accurately, about the systems we build around it, that allows for this perpetual motion? It's a question that invites us to look beyond the surface, to understand the underlying currents. Think of it like a river. A river doesn't stop flowing just because the sun sets. It continues its journey, carving its path, nourishing the lands it touches, its momentum driven by gravity and the landscape itself. Similarly, when capital is put to work, when it's invested in ventures, lent out, or compounded, it gains its own momentum. This momentum is fueled by several factors: the reinvestment of earnings, the inherent demand for capital in a functioning economy, and the very passage of time. Each dollar earned can then earn more dollars, and those dollars, in turn, can earn even more. This compounding effect is perhaps the most profound illustration of money's ability to grow even when we aren't actively pushing it. Have you ever stopped to marvel at the sheer power of this seemingly simple mechanism? It's a force that, left unchecked and guided by wisdom, can lead to extraordinary accumulation over time. This is where the concept of the sleeping money truly comes alive. It's not that the money is inactive. It's that its activity is often subtle, invisible to the casual observer, and most potent when allowed to operate over extended periods. Imagine a gardener planting a seed. They water it, tend to it, but then they must wait. They don't yank at the sprout daily, hoping to make it grow faster. They trust the natural process, the unseen work happening beneath the soil. This is the same principle at play with our finances, a principle that has been understood in varying degrees for centuries. The real secret, then, isn't necessarily about working harder, but about working smarter, about strategically deploying resources, and then having the patience to let time and compounding do their remarkable work. It's about cultivating a trust in the process, a belief that our efforts, once initiated, can continue to bear fruit even when our direct attention is elsewhere. This understanding is key to shifting our perspective from one of constant striving to one of confident allowing, a crucial element in cultivating a life of both prosperity and peace. As we reflect on this continuous multiplication, it's vital to acknowledge the human element, the inherent desire for growth and security that drives our interaction with finance. We are, by nature, creatures who seek to improve our circumstances, to build a better future for ourselves and our loved ones. This innate drive is what propels us to save, to invest, and seek opportunities. However, the modern world, with its constant barrage of information and its emphasis on immediate gratification, can often create a sense of urgency that works against this natural rhythm of growth. We see quick schemes, hear promises of instant wealth, and find ourselves caught in a cycle of wanting things now. This is where the wisdom of the ancients, and indeed the timeless principles of sound finance, become most relevant. The Venetian bankers, for all their sophistication, understood that true wealth wasn't built in a day. It was a slow, deliberate accumulation, a testament to consistent effort and patient waiting. Think about the difference between a flash flood and a deep, steady river. The flood is dramatic, powerful, but often destructive and short-lived. The river, however, carves its path, sustains life, and endures for eons. Our financial growth, to be truly sustainable and beneficial, should ideally mirror the river, not the flood. This requires a conscious effort to cultivate patience, to resist the urge for immediate returns, and to trust in the power of compounding over time. What if we approached our financial goals with the same patience we might apply to learning a new skill, mastering an instrument, or nurturing a plant? What if we recognize that periods of inactivity, periods of rest and contemplation, are not failures, but essential phases in the growth cycle? This perspective shift is fundamental. It moves us from a mindset of constant, often exhausting, effort to one of strategic action followed by confident allowing. It's about understanding that by planting our seeds wisely and then giving the time and space to grow, we can achieve far greater and more sustainable results than by constantly digging them up to check their progress. This journey from the Silk Road to the digital age has revealed a consistent truth. Money, when understood and nurtured, possesses an incredible capacity for self-perpetuation, a silent, tireless ability to grow. Let's consider profound implications of this for our own lives, moving beyond the abstract concept of finance and into the personal sphere. This bedtime story is not just about accumulating wealth. It's about cultivating a mindset that fosters both prosperity and peace. In our relentless pursuit of financial goals, we often overlook the essential role of rest. We see rest as a luxury, an indulgence, something to be earned only after extreme exertion. But what if rest is not an end in itself, but a vital component of the growth process? Think about how ideas germinate in the quiet of the night, how our bodies repair and strengthen themselves during sleep, how nature undergoes periods of dormancy before bursting forth with new life. This biological and natural imperative for rest is mirrored in the financial realm. The capital that is allowed to sit, to compound, to be reinvested is, in a sense, resting from the immediate demands of active management, yet it is at its most productive. This offers a powerful paradigm shift for us. Instead of viewing rest as the absence of productivity, we can begin to see it as a catalyst for it. When we allow ourselves periods of true rest, periods where we are not actively striving or worrying, our minds are free to process, to synthesize, and to generate new insights. This mental quietude can lead to better decision-making, innovative ideas, and a deeper sense of well-being, all of which are conducive to long-term prosperity. So, as you settle in, consider this. Is your money resting effectively? And more importantly, are you allowing yourself to rest in a way that fosters your own growth and the growth of your resources? The ancient traders, the Venetian bankers, and the digital architects of today's markets all, in their own ways, understood the value of time and the power of sustained, patient accumulation. They understood that growth often happens in the quiet, in the unseen processes that unfold over time. This Astoria D. Dormier is an invitation to embrace that understanding, to trust that by acting wisely and then allowing, we can cultivate a life that is not only financially secure, but also deeply peaceful. What are your thoughts on the idea that rest itself can be a form of productive investment? I'd be curious to hear your reflections in the comments below. The concept of money's inherent multiplicatory nature, once established as a persistent force, opens a fascinating avenue into its influence on human perception and decision-making, particularly when we consider the subtle shifts in our internal landscapes. Beyond the quantifiable returns, there's an intangible psychological dividend that accrues from understanding and aligning with this natural flow. Imagine the psychological weight of constantly feeling that one must be doing something, generating something, to justify one's existence or one's wealth. This can lead to a frantic energy, a perpetual state of unease, even when objectively successful. Conversely, when one embraces a principle that value can indeed grow in periods of apparent quiescence, a profound sense of relief and confidence can emerge. It's akin to recognizing that a meticulously crafted plan doesn't require constant micromanagement to succeed. Rather, it thrives on consistent, strategic oversight and periods of patient observation. This is not about passive resignation, but about an active, mindful disengagement where trust in the established trajectory takes precedence. Furthermore, this understanding can liberate us from a tyranny of immediate results, allowing for a more robust, long-term strategic vision in all aspects of life, not just finance. Consider the artist who, after a burst of intense creative activity, allows their work to sit for a while, gaining perspective before returning to refine it. This period of detachment isn't idleness. It's a crucial part of the iterative process that leads to a more polished, profound outcome. The psychological benefit lies in the liberation from the pressure to constantly produce, allowing for periods of absorption and synthesis that often yield far richer results. Building on this, however, it's crucial to differentiate this from mere procrastination or a lack of discipline. The efficacy of money's silent growth hinges on the quality of the initial effort and the soundness of the underlying investment or strategy. A poorly conceived venture, even if left to its own devices, is unlikely to magically transform into a robust enterprise. The analogy here shifts from a gardener to a ship captain setting a course. The captain must meticulously plot the journey, account for currents and winds, and then trust the vessel and the crew to navigate the vast ocean. There will be periods of calm seas where the ship glides forward with minimal intervention, and periods of storm requiring immediate, decisive action. The key is that the captain's vigilance isn't about constantly fiddling with the sails. It's about understanding when to adjust, when to hold steady, and when to weather the turbulence. Consequently, for an individual, this means that the rest periods are not for shirking responsibility, but for allowing well-laid plans to execute their inherent potential, a potential that was established through prior, diligent action. It's about fostering an environment where that initial investment of effort can truly bear fruit, unhindered by unnecessary interference or an anxious need for instant validation. This requires a sophisticated understanding of risk management and a keen ability to discern between necessary intervention and detrimental overmanagement. The psychological payoff is immense: a reduction in anxiety, an increased sense of control derived from competence rather than frantic activity, and a more sustainable approach to achieving long-term objectives. Conversely, the failure to recognize this dynamic can lead to a cycle of perpetual, often exhausting, effort that yields diminishing returns. When we believe that only constant, visible activity generates value, we can fall into the trap of activity without progress. Think of someone constantly rearranging the furniture in a room. They are expending energy, certainly, but not necessarily improving the room's fundamental layout or functionality. In a financial context, this might manifest as frequent, small trades driven by short-term market fluctuations or constantly tweaking a business strategy without allowing any single iteration sufficient time to demonstrate its effectiveness. The psychological toll of this constant motion without meaningful forward momentum can be immense, fostering feelings of futility and burnout. It creates a narrative of perpetual struggle, where success always seems just out of reach because the goalposts are constantly being moved by one's own restless activity. Another crucial layer to this is how the perception of time itself is altered. When we are caught in this cycle, time can feel like an adversary, slipping away without yielding the desired results. However, when we align with the principle of patient growth, time transforms from an enemy into an ally. Each passing moment, in a well-structured scenario, becomes an opportunity for the value we have already cultivated to increase. This subtle shift in temporal perception is profoundly liberating, reducing stress and fostering a more deliberate, confident approach to achieving one's aims. It transforms the arduous climb into a more natural ascent, where progress is steady, assured, and often builds upon itself in a wonderfully organic fashion. The intrinsic nature of value's persistent multiplication extends far beyond mere financial accumulation. It deeply influences our approach to risk and reward, subtly shaping our tolerance for both. When we internalize the principle that sound investments can grow serenely over time, the perceived urgency to engage in high-stakes, rapid return schemes diminishes significantly. Instead of chasing volatile opportunities that promise immense gains but carry equally immense downsides, a more measured perspective emerges. This involves a deeper appreciation for calculated risks, where the potential for growth is balanced against a thorough understanding of potential pitfalls, rather than a blind leap of faith. Think of a seasoned sailor navigating treacherous waters. They don't avoid all challenging passages. Rather, they meticulously study the charts, understand prevailing currents, and prepare their vessel for potential squalls. Their acceptance of risk is not recklessness, but informed preparedness. This nuanced view of risk, fostered by the understanding of patient growth, allows for a more stable and less anxiety-ridden financial journey. Now, consider how this applies when you face a significant investment decision. Rather than succumbing to FOMO, fear of missing out, and jumping into an unproven, speculative venture, you might instead ask yourself, does this opportunity align with a strategy that allows for gradual, compounding growth, or does it rely solely on a dramatic, unpredictable surge? This deeper analysis, born from the recognition of time's amplifying effect, can steer you away from potentially ruinous gambles towards more predictable, albeit slower, paths to prosperity. Furthermore, this very understanding fosters a distinctive form of psychological resilience. When setbacks occur, as they inevitably do in any endeavor, the person attuned to the rhythm of patient growth is less likely to be derailed. Instead of viewing a temporary downturn as a catastrophic failure, they interpret it as a natural fluctuation within a larger, upward trend. This is akin to observing the ebb and flow of the tide. The water recedes, but always returns, often with greater force. This mental framework allows for a steadier emotional keel, preventing panic-driven decisions that often exacerbate losses. For instance, during an economic recession, an investor who believes in long-term compounding might see falling stock prices not as a reason to liquidate their holdings in fear, but as an opportunity to acquire valuable assets at a discount, knowing that historical patterns suggest eventual recovery and subsequent growth. This is distinct from simply being stubborn. It is about having a strategic patience rooted in a deep understanding of cyclical patterns and the historical tendency of value to rebound and expand. It's about maintaining faith in the process, even when the immediate signals are discouraging, because you understand that dormant periods are often preludes to renewal and subsequent expansion. Another crucial layer to this is how the principle of patient growth informs our definition of success itself. In a culture that often equates success with rapid ascent and visible, immediate achievements, embracing the power of slow, steady accumulation offers a compelling alternative. This perspective redefines progress not as a frantic sprint, but as a deliberate marathon pace. Success becomes less about the dazzling flash of a lottery win and more about the quiet satisfaction of a well-tended garden that yields abundant harvest year after year. Think of the artisan who spends decades perfecting their craft, each piece a testament to gradual mastery and continuous refinement. Their reputation and livelihood grow not from a single viral sensation, but from consistent quality and incremental improvement over time. This slower, more sustainable model of success can lead to a deeper sense of fulfillment, as it is built on a foundation of skill, dedication, and understanding of natural growth cycles, rather than the fickle whims of chance or fleeting trends. It cultivates an inner confidence derived from competence and perseverance, rather than external validation based on rapid, often superficial, gains. The principle of patient value multiplication profoundly reshapes our perception of legacy and intergenerational wealth transfer. Rather than viewing wealth solely as a sum to be passed down, it becomes a living entity, cultivated and guided to continue its generative journey. Consider the concept of family trust not merely as a repository of assets, but as a dynamic instrument designed to sustain and grow wealth across multiple generations. This requires foresight, a strategic implementation of growth mechanisms that can outpace inflation and maintain purchasing power over decades, even centuries. It necessitates an understanding of market cycles, diversification strategies, and the selection of investments that possess inherent longevity, rather than those dependent on fleeting trends. When a family embraces this philosophy, wealth ceases to be a static inheritance and evolves into a continuously nurtured resource, a testament to prudent stewardship rather than a simple windfall. This approach shifts the focus from immediate consumption to enduring prosperity, instilling a sense of responsibility and continuity in heirs. Furthermore, this sustained growth model encourages a more ethical and impactful application of capital. Wealth that is cultivated with patience and a long-term vision is often less susceptible to speculative excesses and more inclined toward investments that foster sustainable development, innovation, and societal well-being. Think of endowments for universities or foundations dedicated to specific scientific research. These entities operate on the principle of perpetual growth, where the initial capital is invested to generate returns that fund ongoing operations, scholarships, or groundbreaking discoveries. The objective is not a rapid payout, but a continuous cycle of creation and reinvestment, benefiting future generations in tangible ways. This demonstrates that a patient approach to wealth not only secures financial futures, but can also serve as a powerful engine for positive societal change, aligning financial objectives with broader humanistic goals. Conversely, a mindset fixated on short-term gains often leads to wealth dissipation across generations. Without a strategy for sustained growth and a clear understanding of capital preservation, inherited fortunes can dwindle rapidly as heirs, unaccustomed to principles of compound appreciation, consume principal or make imprudent investments. This rapid depletion can create a sense of entitlement that undermines any potential for future financial independence, perpetuating a cycle of reliance rather than fostering genuine stewardship. The absence of long-term perspective can transform a potentially enduring legacy into a transient inheritance, a fleeting moment of prosperity that ultimately fades. Another crucial layer is the psychological impact on individuals who are part of a lineage that practices patient wealth cultivation. It cultivates a distinct form of financial literacy, one that emphasizes discipline, strategic thinking, and an understanding of economic history. Rather than viewing money as a means for immediate gratification, they learn to see it as a tool for future building, appreciating the subtle power of compounding and the wisdom of delayed rewards. This fosters a sense of competence and empowerment, as they are equipped with the knowledge and mindset to not only manage, but also to grow the wealth entrusted to them. This ongoing education and ingrained perspective are perhaps the most valuable aspects of a truly enduring financial legacy, ensuring that the seeds of prosperity continue to be sown for generations to come. This deep dive into the mechanics of enduring wealth cultivation naturally steers us toward the concept of opportunity cost, a fundamental but often overlooked aspect of financial decision-making. When capital is deployed in one direction, it is inherently unavailable for deployment elsewhere. Understanding this is critical because it reframes perceived inaction not as idleness, but as a deliberate choice with inherent value, provided that choice is strategic. For instance, imagine a business owner who decides not to immediately reinvest all profits back into a rapidly expanding but inherently volatile product line. Instead, they choose to allocate a portion of those funds into a less flashy but more stable, long-term infrastructure improvement, or perhaps a diversified portfolio. The immediate gratification of aggressive expansion is foregone, but the opportunity cost, the potential losses or instability associated with over-reliance on that single volatile venture, is also mitigated. This is where the money sleeping takes on a more active role in risk management. By choosing a path of slower, steadier growth, one implicitly chooses to avoid the higher risks and potential immediate failures associated with chasing every fleeting market opportunity. It's a conscious selection of one set of future possibilities over another, prioritizing resilience and sustainability. Building upon this understanding of opportunity cost, consider the psychological fortification that arises from mastering this principle. It instills a profound sense of agency, moving individuals from a reactive stance, chasing whatever opportunity shouts loudest, to a proactive one, where choices are made based on a deliberate assessment of long-term value creation versus immediate, potentially illusory gains. Now, picture yourself facing a significant financial decision, a lucrative but complex business acquisition versus a steady, reliable dividend-paying investment. The temptation might be to pursue the former, due to its higher potential immediate payout. However, recognizing the opportunity cost, the foregone stability and predictable income of the latter allows for a more balanced evaluation. This isn't about shying away from ambition, but about channeling it strategically. It encourages a calculated approach where the sleep of capital in a stable investment represents a conscious trade-off for security and predictable, compounding returns, rather than a missed chance for quick riches. This conscious delegation of capital, allowing to work steadily in one area while foregoing immediate but riskier gains elsewhere, fundamentally alters one's relationship with financial growth, fostering patience and a more robust long-term outlook. Consequently, this deliberate stewardship of capital, informed by an awareness of opportunity cost, cultivates an enhanced capacity for resilience in the face of market volatility. When wealth is diversified and strategically positioned for long-term appreciation, temporary downturns become less catastrophic and more like natural market cycles. Think of a well-established forest versus a single, fast-growing sapling. While the sapling might shoot up initially, it's highly vulnerable to the first harsh winter. The mature forest, with its diverse species and deep root systems, weathers storms with far greater fortitude, and even damaged trees often regenerate. Similarly, a portfolio or business strategy that prioritizes long-term, compounding growth through careful allocation, even if it means foregoing the highest short-term gains, is far better equipped to withstand economic shocks. The sleeping capital in secure, stable assets acts as a buffer, absorbing the impact of market fluctuations and providing a foundation for recovery and subsequent growth once conditions improve. This isn't about avoiding risk entirely, but about managing it intelligently by understanding that sometimes the most productive action is to let well-chosen assets continue their quiet appreciation, unperturbed by the immediate noise of the market. Conversely, a pervasive misconception is that money sleeping equates to stagnant potential, leading individuals to constantly seek new, high-octane ventures even when current endeavors are performing admirably. This relentless pursuit of novelty, while seemingly proactive, can paradoxically erode long-term value by constantly incurring transaction costs, management overhead, and the inherent risk of entering unfamiliar territory. Consider an entrepreneur who has successfully built a stable, profitable business. Instead of allowing that enterprise to continue its steady growth and reinvestment cycle, they might feel compelled to sell it prematurely to chase a new, untested idea. The opportunity cost here is immense. The ongoing, compounding profits from the established business are sacrificed for the uncertain promise of a new venture. This frenetic cycle, driven by a misunderstanding of what constitutes true productivity, can lead to wealth erosion rather than accumulation. It highlights that the most potent form of financial growth often lies not in constant reinvention, but in the disciplined nurturing of existing, soundly performing assets. Another crucial layer to this is the development of a sophisticated understanding of time arbitrage. This isn't merely about letting money sit. It's about leveraging the difference in growth rates and risk profiles between different asset classes over varying time horizons. For example, understanding that short-term, highly liquid investments might offer minimal returns while carrying the risk of inflation eroding their value, versus long-term, less liquid investments that have a higher potential for compounding appreciation over decades. Imagine a wealthy individual deciding how to allocate funds for a future philanthropic endeavor intended to operate in perpetuity. They understand that if they opt solely for high-yield, short-term speculative instruments, the principal might be depleted or significantly diminished by unforeseen market crashes over the long duration required. Instead, they might strategically balance these with lower yield but exceptionally stable assets designed for enduring growth, even if those assets require a longer sleep period. This strategic deployment, a form of financial time traveling where present decisions are optimized for future outcomes across vastly different timelines, is a hallmark of truly enduring wealth management. It's about making capital work at multiple speeds simultaneously, ensuring both immediate stability and long-term generative power. The deliberate cultivation of long-term value through patient capital growth fundamentally alters our relationship with innovation and obsolescence. Instead of constantly chasing the newest technological marvel or the latest market trend, a strategy focused on sustained appreciation often favors foundational strengths and adaptable frameworks. Consider a technology company that, rather than pouring all its resources into developing the next ephemeral gadget, invests heavily in robust, modular software architecture. This approach might appear less glamorous in the short term, but offers a significant advantage. The core system remains viable and adaptable even as specific peripheral technologies become obsolete. This allows for consistent, predictable revenue streams derived from maintenance, upgrade, and integration services, rather than relying on the hit-or-miss success of a single product cycle. Now, think about how this applies when you're evaluating opportunities. Does the innovation promise fleeting dominance, or does it build upon enduring principles that can adapt and evolve over time? This focus on adaptability, on building systems that gracefully incorporate change rather than being disrupted by it, is a powerful manifestation of patient wealth building. It's about creating value that transcends the lifespan of any single component, ensuring its relevance and generative capacity for years to come. Furthermore, this perspective allows us to reframe the concept of intellectual property and its long-term monetization. Rather than viewing patents or copyrights solely as assets to be licensed for immediate gain, a patient strategy sees them as components of a durable value proposition. Imagine a renowned publisher that holds the rights to classic literature. While they might license individual works for specific projects, their core strategy revolves around maintaining the integrity and availability of their catalog. The long-term value isn't derived from a single high-stakes movie adaptation, but from a continuous, consistent demand for these foundational works across educational institutions, libraries, and discerning readers. The sleeping value here lies in the enduring cultural significance and educational utility of the intellectual property, which continues to generate returns through consistent, albeit less dramatic, channels. This requires a deep understanding of market needs that persist beyond ephemeral trends, identifying intellectual assets whose inherent value is likely to appreciate or remain stable over extended periods. It shifts the focus from a quick payout to the sustained, cumulative benefit derived from owning and stewarding assets with proven, lasting appeal. Conversely, a frantic pursuit of innovation, divorced from the principles of sustained value, can lead to significant financial and resource waste. Think of companies that constantly R&D cutting edge, but ultimately niche technologies, pouring fortunes into development with no clear long-term monetization strategy beyond hope for acquisition or a short-lived market advantage. This often results in projects that are prematurely abandoned, leaving behind a trail of sunk costs and missed opportunities for optimizing existing, proven revenue streams. This is akin to a farmer abandoning a healthy, productive field to chase rumors of gold in a distant and proven territory. The immediate potential for a quick strike might be tempting, but the opportunity cost, the yield from the established fertile land, is irrevocably lost. Such an approach, driven by a misunderstanding of sustained value creation, often fails to build a robust, resilient enterprise, leaving it vulnerable to the slightest shift in market sentiment or technological tide. Another crucial layer to consider is how this patient approach to value multiplication informs strategic partnerships and ecosystem building. Instead of seeking alliances purely for immediate market access or short-term competitive advantage, a long-term perspective encourages partnerships built on mutual, enduring growth. Imagine two complementary businesses, perhaps a hardware manufacturer and a software development firm, forming a deep, integrated alliance. The hardware firm doesn't just sell its products to the software company. They collaborate on product roadmaps, share R&D insights, and co-develop integrated solutions. This creates a synergistic ecosystem where the success of one entity directly fuels the growth of the other, fostering a compounding effect that benefits both parties over time. The sleeping value here isn't just in each company's individual assets, but in the combined potential of their interconnectedness, a potential that can only be fully realized through sustained collaboration and a shared vision for long-term market leadership. This fosters a more stable, mutually beneficial growth trajectory compared to opportunistic, transactional alliances that dissolve once their immediate objectives are met. The principle of leveraging time for financial gain extends into the nuanced realm of regulatory landscapes and their impact on long-term value creation. Different jurisdictions possess varying legal frameworks governing investments, taxation, and business operations. A strategy focused on patient growth understands that navigating these complexities effectively can unlock significant, sustainable advantages. For instance, establishing operations in or channeling investments through regions with favorable, stable regulatory environments can dramatically reduce long-term costs and risks, allowing capital to compound more predictably. Conversely, operating within a constantly shifting or punitive regulatory regime can erode value through unforeseen taxes, compliance burdens, or outright prohibitions, effectively sabotaging the compounding process. Now, consider how this applies when you're evaluating a global expansion or a significant cross-border investment. Rather than simply chasing the largest immediate market or the lowest labor costs, a patient investor will meticulously assess the long-term stability and predictability of the regulatory environment. This due diligence is not about avoiding regulation, but about understanding its trajectory and choosing environments where consistent, lawful growth is not only permitted but actively facilitated. This often involves prioritizing jurisdictions with established legal traditions, transparent governance, and a track record of respecting property rights over those characterized by sudden policy shifts or political instability. The value unlocked here isn't in a single transaction, but in the sustained operational efficiency and reduced risk exposure that a well-chosen regulatory haven provides over decades. Building on this, however, the strategic manipulation of time through regulatory foresight can also be seen in the development and monetization of intellectual property over its full life cycle. Patents, copyrights, and trademarks have finite legal lifespans. A short-term focus might see an entity aggressively seeking immediate licensing deals or sales, maximizing early returns. A patient, long-term strategy, conversely, might involve carefully managing the life cycle of this IP. This could entail strategically deferring certain monetization avenues until later in the patent's life when its exclusivity is more valuable due to market maturity, or structuring licensing agreements that capture residual value even after the primary protection expires, perhaps through perpetual service contracts or ongoing royalty streams tied to maintenance and support. Consider how this applies when you hold a patent for a technology with a long development cycle. Instead of rushing to market prematurely, you might focus on building a robust ecosystem around it, securing complementary patents or establishing industry standards. This deliberate pacing ensures that when the core IP's protected period begins to wane, its value is locked into a wider network of related assets and market adoption, creating a more enduring revenue stream than a single, short-lived licensing burst could ever achieve. This layered approach maximizes the time value of the intellectual asset, ensuring it continues to generate returns far beyond its initial protection period. Consequently, the effective management of regulatory and IP life cycles profoundly influences risk diversification and capital allocation strategies. When a company understands that certain revenue streams are time-bound due to patent expiry or shifting regulations, it must proactively plan for the eventual decline of those streams and the rise of new ones. This necessitates a continuous reevaluation of capital allocation. Funds generated from a maturing asset might be strategically redirected towards research and development for future innovations, or invested in establishing market presence in nascent industries with long-term growth potential. Now, consider how this applies when you're managing a diversified portfolio that includes assets with known expiry dates, such as certain types of infrastructure projects or patents. A forward-thinking approach involves not just monitoring current performance, but actively forecasting future cash flows and and planning for the reinvestment of capital as those assets mature. This is about creating a self-sustaining cycle where the eventual winding down of one profitable venture directly funds the growth and development of the next, ensuring that capital remains continuously at work, compounding its value across different stages of market and technological evolution. Conversely, failing to account for these temporal and regulatory dimensions can lead to significant value destruction. A common pitfall is over-reliance on assets with predictable expiry dates without adequate succession planning. Imagine a pharmaceutical company whose blockbuster drug is nearing the end of its patent protection. If the company has not invested sufficiently in developing new pipeline drugs or diversifying its revenue streams, the expiration of that patent can trigger a precipitous financial decline. The sleeping capital that was generating substantial returns from the patented drug is suddenly exposed to generic competition, leading to a rapid erosion of market share and profitability. This illustrates that perceived inaction, failing to plan for the inevitable, can be as detrimental as a poor investment choice, effectively squandering the value accumulated during the asset's protected lifespan. The lesson here is that true long-term prosperity requires not just generating value, but actively managing its temporal and regulatory life cycle, ensuring a continuous flow of returns rather than relying on the finite lifespan of any single asset or market position. This proactive management of obsolescence and regulatory change is, in essence, a sophisticated form of letting capital sleep productively, ensuring perpetual re-engagement in value creation across evolving landscapes. The notion of value persistent multiplication also profoundly impacts how we engage with socioeconomic structures and their inherent fragilities. Societies, much like individual portfolios, can be overly concentrated in certain industries or assets, rendering them vulnerable to disruption. A nation heavily reliant on a single export commodity, for example, faces significant risk if global demand plummets or if a new substitute emerges. A strategy focused on fostering diverse economic engines, agriculture, manufacturing, technology, services, mirrors the principle of diversification in finance. It builds resilience, ensuring that a downturn in one sector doesn't cripple the entire economy. Now, consider how this applies when you're analyzing the long-term stability of a national economy or a regional market. Are its primary drivers diversified, capable of weathering sector-specific shocks? Or is it precariously balanced on a single, potentially volatile pillar? This understanding encourages a long-term perspective on economic policy, favoring sustainable development and broad-based growth over the allure of quick, concentrated gains that can leave an entire population exposed. Building on this, however, the concept of value's inherent growth also sheds light on the importance of cultural capital and its often underestimated economic impact. Beyond tangible assets and financial instruments, a society's accumulated knowledge, artistic traditions, skilled workforce, and robust social networks represent a form of wealth that can appreciate over time. Think of countries that have become hubs for scientific research or artistic innovation. Their enduring appeal and economic vitality stem not just from abundant natural resources, but from a rich tapestry of cultural and intellectual assets. This cultural capital can attract talent, foster new industries, and generate tourism, creating a compounding effect that benefits the economy in ways that are not always immediately quantifiable. Consider how this applies when you're assessing the long-term investment potential of a region or even a company. Does it possess a strong cultural identity, a commitment to education, and a vibrant creative scene? These factors, often overlooked in purely financial analyses, can be powerful engines of sustained, compounding value creation, acting as a societal equivalent of a well-managed, diversified investment portfolio that continues to yield dividends across generations. Furthermore, the principle of leveraging time for growth extends to the evolution of societal infrastructure and its impact on economic potential. Investments in foundational elements, transportation networks, communication systems, educational institutions, and healthcare facilities may not yield immediate, spectacular returns. However, their cumulative effect over decades can be transformative. A society with efficient infrastructure can facilitate trade, attract skilled labor, boost productivity, and improve quality of life, creating a virtuous cycle of growth. Imagine a nation that, over a generation, systematically invests in high-speed rail, universal internet access, and world-class universities. While the initial outlay is substantial, the long-term benefits reduce logistical costs, enhance innovation, a highly skilled workforce, compound exponentially, making it a far more attractive and productive place for business and life. This is akin to investing in a company's core operational framework, rather than solely focusing on the profitability of its latest product. The foundational strength, though less flashy, underpins sustained, long-term value generation. Conversely, neglecting these foundational investments, or conversely, pursuing growth strategies that are inherently unsustainable or socially divisive, can lead to long-term economic decay. Societies that prioritize short-term gains, perhaps through exploitative resource extraction or unchecked financial speculation, often build economies on fragile foundations. When the underlying assets are depleted or the speculative bubbles burst, the resulting social and economic instability can be profound and long-lasting. Think of communities that boomed during resource rushes only to collapse when the resources were exhausted, leaving behind widespread unemployment and dilapidated infrastructure. This demonstrates that true, enduring prosperity is built not on fleeting windfalls, but on the patient cultivation of resilient, diversified socioeconomic structures that are designed to adapt and thrive across changing times, ensuring that the collective capital of the society continues to appreciate. Reflecting on this journey through the ceaseless currents of value, we've observed a singular, persistent truth: that growth in its most profound and enduring forms is less about frantic motion and more about a natural, almost inevitable unfolding. The threads we've traced, from the dusty caravans of antiquity to the invisible streams of digital exchange, all converge on this remarkable characteristic of value: its inherent tendency not merely to endure, but to expand, often the very moments we've ceased our direct intervention. It's as if the universe itself conspires with patient endeavor, offering a subtle, continuous amplification to that which has been wisely set in motion and then allowed to find its own rhythm. The wisdom embedded in this observation transcends mere financial accumulation. It speaks to a deeper understanding of momentum, of how carefully planted seeds, tended with intention, unfurl with power all their own, blossoming in their own time, often beyond our immediate perception. As we pivot towards our final contemplation, consider the cumulative effect of these insights. It's akin to witnessing the formation of a mighty river, not born from sudden deluge, but from countless rivulets and streams, each contributing its flow, merging and gathering strength over vast stretches of time and terrain. Each moment of wise deployment, each period of patient observation, adds to this accumulating force, shaping the landscape of our future potential. The whispers of the past and the hum of the present coalesce, suggesting a powerful, underlying principle that governs not just commerce, but the very nature of creation and fulfillment. The path from a single coin to a thriving ecosystem prosperity is illuminated by the consistent recognition of this silent, generative force. In light of these converging perspectives, the anticipation for our concluding thoughts naturally arises. We've journeyed through centuries and across continents, observing how the fundamental nature of value remains, adapting and thriving. This persistent quality, this inherent drive toward expansion, invites us to consider a final, perhaps transformative, understanding. The intricate dance between action and stillness, between effort and allowance, points toward a more harmonious way of engaging with the world and its abundant possibilities. The anticipation now is not for a revelation of new information, but for a deeper integration of what we've already glimpsed, a recognition that true abundance often flourishes when we cease our relentless striving and instead learn to trust and align with the natural, compounding rhythms of growth that have always been at play. The enduring principle we've traced, from the ancient trade routes to the invisible currents of digital finance, reveals a profound truth. Value, when set in motion with intention, possesses a remarkable capacity for autonomous growth. It's a force that doesn't merely exist. It perpetuates, adapts, and, most remarkably, multiplies, often during the very periods when our conscious effort has ceased. This isn't magic, but a fundamental rhythm of the economic and natural world, a silent orchestration of compounding returns that time itself faithfully conducts. Our journey has illuminated that prosperity, in its most sustainable and deeply satisfying form, is not solely the product of relentless exertion, but a wise partnership with time, an understanding that sometimes The most potent action is to allow, to trust the foundational work that has been laid, and to let the inherent momentum of value unfold. This understanding fundamentally reframes our relationship with our endeavors, whether financial, creative, or personal. It suggests that periods of rest are not mere interludes of inactivity, but fertile ground where the seeds of our efforts can truly germinate and strengthen, unimpeded by anxious oversight. The merchant on the Silk Road, the Venetian banker, the modern algorithm, all, in their own epoch, have demonstrated this timeless principle. They understood, or intuitively grasped, that capital, like a living organism, requires not just nurturing but also the space to grow according to its own inherent nature. This perspective liberates us from the tyranny of perpetual motion, offering a pathway to achieving abundance not through exhaustive effort, but through strategic deployment followed by confident, patient observation. It is in these quiet phases, when we allow our cultivated assets and our own developed capacities to simply be, that their true potential for expansion is most fully realized. The implication for our lives is clear and transformative: to embrace the power of the deliberate pause, to recognize that the most significant growth often occurs in the unseen processes beneath the surface of immediate perception. Much like a deep forest flourishes long after the initial sapling is planted, our worth and our potential are not solely defined by the visible output of our efforts, but also by the wisdom of our patience and our capacity to trust the inherent generative power that exists within well-laid plans and cultivated resources. The true practice begins now, not in adding more to your plate, but in discerning when to act and, more importantly, when to simply allow. May this understanding bring you a profound sense of peace and a renewed confidence in the quiet, potent forces that shape a truly prosperous and fulfilling existence.